Hey, what up, Flowmies? This is Gabe, and it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. This week, we are going to talk with Jeff Engel. He is the COO of ICI Insurance, and they deal with commercial workers' comp, liability insurance, also auto. They cover a lot of things. They're a broker, and they can work with different companies. We're going to talk about insurance. And I know that's a subject that we, as business owners, often hate to deal with because it's not fun and it involves a lot of things that we just have very little knowledge about. So it makes us uncomfortable. But it is so important to make the right decisions when it comes to the insurance for our company. So we are going to talk about a lot of different topics. We're going to talk about care, custody, and control exclusions. What exactly are they? Why is it important for us to know about them? And how can we try to protect ourselves from those exclusions? Also, the cost of auto insurance. We understand they're expensive, but what are some things we can do to bring that cost, or at least to protect us from liability in the event that we or one of our employees is in a car accident? We're going to talk also about general liability and workers' compensation audits. I know if you're a business owner and you've got employees, you hate them with the passion, but what can we do to make the process easier, but also to ensure that our rates are not unjustly raised on us because of an audit? And then also we're going to talk about key person insurance. It's something I had never heard about, but now I am going to make sure we get it because it's a really great protection for you, especially if you have several crews and you have key people who your business relies on to be there. So a lot of really important information. I know it's not a topic we like to talk about, but man, the information here is going to save you a lot of money and a lot of headaches. So please listen in as we talk with Jeff Engel. All right, Flowmies, we are talking with Jeff Engel. He is the COO of ICI Insurance. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Insurance is one of those things that as window cleaners, we usually have like 2% knowledge of, and it's like one of the most important things that we need to have. And so I'm really glad that you're able to come on and kind of share your experience and your knowledge and help us small business owners to make the right decisions for our business. So thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself to begin with? Like, how did you get involved with insurance? Was this your life's passion when you were a kid? Were you playing insurance with your neighbor?
Yeah, no, definitely not my life's passion. I think growing up, I probably thought insurance was like one step above a used car salesman, to be honest with you. So, no, I never planned on it. I actually grew up wanting to be an engineer. And so went to Kansas State University and got a degree in industrial engineering.
Nice.
And spent about 10 years in various operations and quality management roles in the manufacturing industry. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. Got to learn how a lot of different things in the world are made, and really, kind of hone my leadership skills a little bit.
Sure.
And I also got involved in the safety aspects and the risk management and the loss prevention aspects at my final stop that I was at, where I spent a good, I think 3 years in this specific role in a very large manufacturing company, and I really enjoyed that portion, and I enjoyed being able to help people in other areas of the company, learn how to maybe do things better or lower their costs, or possibly be less likely to have an accident, find ways to prevent things. And so going through all that, I had various people saying, what, you'd be really good at this, and at insurance, and I thought they were crazy. And then I kind of took an inventory of myself, and I was like, I am working probably more than I want, I'm traveling more than I want. And I started doing some research on industries that I could get into, and just had a great opportunity fall in my lap. So I left manufacturing in 2013, and went into insurance as just insurance sales, essentially, for commercial insurance. And fortunately, I did very well, and worked my way up in over a period of about 5 years to president of the agency I was at. And then that agency, a buddy of mine, one of our competitors that I had known him since I was a little kid, actually called me one day and said, "Hey, what would you think if we bought you guys?" And that's the agency I'm at now, ICI Insurance. where I plan to retire. I love it. I love the position I'm in because I get to spend about half the time kind of working with operations and trying to help things at the agency, and I think the other half the time just working with clients and teaching people about insurance and the good, bad, and the ugly, because it's not all beautiful, and kind of walking them through the various things they need. So
that's excellent. Yeah, well, and that seems like a pretty straight transition then, going from safety analysis to insurance, because that's essentially what you're doing. So very, very neat. Now, I met you at the IWCA convention. In fact, if you Flowmies, if you go back and watch one of our IWCA episodes that we did, Jeff is one of the interviewees there, and that's where we first got in touch. And I thought your interview was great. I think our conversation afterward was better, and that's what planted the seeds to see if I could get you on for the Flowcast. Because what I think I noticed about your way of dealing or talking with me was you were definitely more interested in what I needed. And usually the feeling I get when talking with insurance agents is, what can I sell this guy? Right. And so I feel like I'm always on defense trying to say, well, okay, he's offering this product. Do I really need this product though? And of course, I don't have the knowledge to know whether I need it or not, right? They're telling me stuff, but is it really? And so I felt right away that you were kind of in my corner of, like, especially after I told you what my story was. So Flowmies, I'll fill you in on a little bit of my personal situation. So we had insurance through a broker in town, and we've had them for years, like 7 or 8 years. We've used them, and they've always, every year, they kind of hunt around to see what the best rates are for us for workers' comp and liability insurance. Anyhow, this year, 2022, they said that our best price, we were paying about $6,500 for workers' comp, and it was bumped up to $24,000 if we wanted to do ladder work. And we had already been kind of gearing towards water-fed, but we're not an all water-fed company. We definitely do a lot of ladders. And so we were stuck. So we had to accept the no ladder work. So all of a sudden, our January and February, we were no ladders. And it was rough because a lot of our we just aren't equipped for that yet. So we're buying equipment. We're trying to get, in fact, at the IWCA convention, I bought some poles there. But I talked with Jeff and I let him know my situation after the interview. And he was like, hey, I think we can help you out, talk with me. So long story short, he was able to find insurance that met our needs, that allowed us to get back on the ladder. And we were, in fact, I think we paid less than what we were paying before, because we lumped in the workers' comp, the liability, and our auto. And even though it's a big monthly payment, it's still overall less than what we were paying yearly for our other policy. Can you tell a little bit about, like, for some of the things you had talked to me about, which I think is important for window cleaners to know? Because my broker, the other broker was a good broker. They just weren't in tune to the needs of window cleaners specifically. It's more general business type insurance. I don't know if you can remember, but you remember some of the things that you did for me to help us to bring that cost down, or at least even just get accepted, because they weren't even, a lot of the companies weren't even willing to even give a look at us.
Yeah, window cleaning is a really tough industry to insure. And a lot of it, the issue is actually the underwriters themselves at each carrier, their understanding of what you're doing. They hear the word window cleaning and they immediately picture, guys off of a 100-story building hanging there cleaning. And yes, that is the case in some companies. You've got a lot of work at heights, but in many companies like yourself, you're not doing a ton of work at heights. You might have some ladder work, and you might have some buildings that are maybe 4 stories, 5 stories. But if you've got a water-fed pole, you're cleaning from the ground, and they have, most of them, almost no concept of what that means or what that looks like. The other thing is that there's a lot of carriers out there that don't like window cleaning, the workers' compensation class code for work cleaning at heights. And so it's very, very important when you're talking to a window cleaner. We can go in and understand, like, how much of your work is with a water-fed pole, and how much of it is actually on a ladder, and how much of it is just, standing on the ground. And you start getting into those type of questions,
Yes.
and you can paint the picture to the underwriter and show them, like, listen, he says it's a 5-story building, but he's standing on the ground. And
Right.
and once they realize that, it kind of opens up a new world. So, from a standpoint with the carriers, there aren't a lot of carriers that will write window cleaning companies. Part of it is because of, occasional height exposure. Part of it, a big part of it, is because of problems with, claims with glass and scratched glass and broken glass. And so because of that, you have to, the agent also needs to know, like, what are some of the things that most, window cleaning operations do to prevent, issues and stop claims, and find out, okay, with Gabe's company, what are all the things that he's doing that are common to a majority of window cleaners, that we can go and tell the underwriter he's doing this, and this, in order to, prevent claims and get them written. Because, somebody might specialize in business insurance, but they need to know that, like, for window cleaning, that in your situation, your agent was trying to say you can only have one class code for work comp on your policy, where
Right.
in all reality, in every state, California's got a little bit different laws. They only have one code, but in every other state, there are 2 codes, and you can track every employee down to the hour, how many hours they're working on the ground and how many hours they're working above the ground for the year, and minimize your cost of above ground cleaning.
Yeah. So just so you can kind of put that together, Flowmies. So basically, what was going on was my agent was lumping all of our hours into two second story work. I had no idea. They asked me, okay, so how many what's your payroll? What's your how much are you paying? How many techs do you have? We went on like that. And so they were assuming all the hours we spent was 2-story work, and that's what we were being charged for. And so Jeff was able to kind of talk with their underwriters and say, no, this is the percentage of time they are actually on the ladders approximately, and then rebid as like, and he also mentioned, just because it's a 2-story house doesn't necessarily mean we're always going to be on ladders.
Right.
So he was able to kind of go into that detail work and help to bring that price down, or at least bring the perception of the risk down in the eyes of the underwriters. So that was a huge thing for us, because that was part of the problem with the other agency. And I mean, I don't know how many years we've been overcharged because of that, because of not being able to distinguish that with the underwriters. They just assume we're always on ladders every single time we get out there.
Right.
The other thing too was they were lumping all of our employees together as if we were all techs. So we have office staff, right? We had 12 employees, but we really only had 5 techs, and not even counting me. So they were charging all the payroll hours, including the office, as part of that amount, instead of limiting it only to the techs who actually are facing that risk. So that was something also I appreciated very much. There was one other thing too, I think, that you guys were able to do. I know it had to do with.
Was it the vehicles and hired and non-owned?
Yes. Could you explain that?
Yeah. So that's the other thing. A lot of there's a number of carriers that and even just agencies that struggle to determine and make sure that you've got what's called hired and non-owned coverage. So that's if you've got somebody that's driving their own personal vehicle while you're out and about, they're trying to go and do some work. So some carriers will literally say, oh, well, we won't offer for this type of classification. So, at ICI, because we write so many window cleaning companies, we actually have a matrix that has every state on it. And then we have all of our carriers that will write window cleaning listed by state. And then we know, for instance, we can put the auto policy with these 5 carriers in this state, and we can put the general liability with these 4 carriers in this state. And we make sure ahead of time that those carriers, they're going to allow the hired and non-owned to be added to the auto policy, and they're going to have the proper endorsement and all the different things that we know a window cleaning company needs in order to make sure, like, they're not getting nickel and dime for stuff throughout the year, and two, making sure that they're not like being overclassified or, like treated like they're doing high-rise work or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, this just goes to the point of when you're who you're dealing with as far as a broker, if they're not familiar with your line of work, these are the types of mistakes that can be made because they're used to doing it a certain way, and it may work great for another business, another type of business. But for us, because we are so specified in the type of work that we do, you really need someone who knows what they're doing so that they're able to kind of get in there and whittle down the specifics so that the underwriter can have an accurate picture of what's actually being done. So anyway, yeah, just important information there. But there are some things that we did want to talk about because these are things that do pertain to everyone in our industry, and we need to know. Again, these are things that it's kind of like almost getting into the weeds of the details of insurance when we're not experts, but we need to know that these things are there because they do play a role and they can cost us money if we're not aware. So the first one was care, custody, and control exclusions. So first of all, could you explain a little bit about what those are and why it's important for us to be aware of whether our policy has them in order to help us with the liability that we're subject to?
Care, custody, and control. It's something that's on. There is an exclusion that's on pretty much every general liability policy in the industry, and really what that says is that if you are working on something, the best example I can give is if it's a plumber and they're hired to clean or to replace a section of pipe in the house because it's defective. So they come in and they replace that section of pipe. They leave the house and, maybe a week later, the pipe bursts. Okay. What the insurance policy is going to do, unless you have an endorsement on your policy, it's going to exclude the pipe itself, but it's going to cover all of the damage that the water caused. Okay, so all the damage to the house is going to be covered, but the pipe itself is going to be excluded. Now, why is that important, and why do I use a plumber? Well, it's easy to explain that scenario, but from a window cleaning standpoint, the pipe is the equivalent of the glass. So the glass is excluded because they essentially don't want an insurance policy to become a warranty. Right. So if you warranty your work, you say, I've worked on this, it's going to be good, or whatever the case is. An insurance policy cannot serve as a warranty. And so to fix that, they say, okay, we're going to exclude what they call as your work. That's actually how it's usually worded in the policy. And it'll say your work or any property that is in your care, custody, or control. So if you are hired to clean something, and that thing that you were hired to clean specifically gets damaged, then that damage is typically excluded on a policy. Now, most policies, if you get it through a carrier or a broker that knows what they're doing, they're going to absolutely make sure that they get an endorsement to put back on it. Okay. So if you go and try and, shop for a policy and, call around for quotes and you don't look at this, the least expensive policy might be the one that doesn't have this endorsement. But if you go and you ask for proposals and you get proposals and you find them, there should be an endorsement that you have attached to your policy. It could be called care, custody, and control endorsement. It could be called voluntary property damage. It could be called several other things, but essentially it's going to give you anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 in coverage for what they call property in your care, custody, and control. So in this example would be windows. Okay. So what that's saying is if you're cleaning a window and you break it, it's going to be covered on that endorsement. And that's how they're going to get coverage for it. Obviously getting a policy with, $25,000 as an example, that's probably the most common amount. That's not going to cover all of the potential you would have with some of your bigger jobs. So there's a bunch of other things because of that exclusion that you probably need to do to make sure you're protecting yourself, and
Gotcha.
that's things like, restoration clean or construction clean. Those can be very, very, fine line or dangerous jobs to take on, because many, many times, the contractor has maybe installed the windows, maybe peeled off the protective coating, and so there might already be paint on it, or like cement chips, or some sort of construction debris on it. In that case, I recommend either stepping away and not doing the clean at all, or getting some sort of a detailed release that says, hey,
yes,
this glass has not been protected and not installed per specifications, and because of that, you're going to sign here that we're going to do everything we can to make this look nice and make it appropriate, but we're not going to be held responsible for glasses or discoloration or scratching, or breakage, whatever the case is. Like, you need to have that, liability released.
Now, do you guys provide liability releases for your clients, or does you recommend it from another?
That's a great question. So unfortunately, our insurance carrier tells us that we can't provide one. We can provide an example, and then really what needs to happen is you would go and talk over with either your attorney or the other client, and just say, is this going to be acceptable for us to be released of liability for this? But it's certainly something that absolutely you need to look into on a construction clean. Some of the other things you want to do is stay away from razors. I know they're tempting, and I know they can do a good job, but they're a very, very slippery slope. So I just really recommend, when at all possible, not using them. Don't give them to your employees unless, it's a specific job that doesn't involve glass, and things like that. And the other thing, and this is probably one of the easiest things, but it takes a little bit of time and effort. And that is, I recommend people get very, very specific about their estimates and take good before pictures.
Gotcha.
So like the first time you go to a house or something like that, or a business, anything out of the ordinary, get a picture of it, because then you've got a record to show, hey, well, maybe this had some damage before, or, it's different than most. And if for some reason it already has damage, or it's something that you don't think you can do appropriately, get that very specific on the estimate, saying that you are not going to be cleaning that, or that it already does have damage on it. I mean, I've had claims happen where a certain, like a cleaner was hired to clean a certain section of windows, and a different window got damaged by them, but it wasn't one they were hired to clean. And because on the estimate it didn't specify cleaning that window, the exclusion didn't apply at all.
Wow.
So if you get specific, it can really come into help. We had an example where a client was cleaning a hotel, okay, and it was I think it was a 3 or 4 story, one of those franchise type hotels.
Yes.
And out in front of it, they had a large awning that was like almost inch thick glass. Okay, a large kind of awning over the entrance. Well, they had been hired to clean the windows on the hotel, not the awning. Okay, not that awning portion. And because that awning was more expensive than the waiver would have been anyways in this case. And so they were up there cleaning the hotel, and they dropped equipment. Okay.
Of course.
And that equipment fell and shattered the glass awning, which was, 1 inch thick. I mean, it was not cheap. And what ended up happening is they got full coverage on it, because they had specified that that's not part of what they were cleaning, and they weren't cleaning it at that time. Like, that was a separate job that they would do at a separate time.
That's important to document that stuff.
Yeah. So make sure, you're very specific about what you're going to clean. And you're very specific about previous damage. And then, construction cleans are a very slippery slope. Just, be wary of them. And then I say, say no to razors if at all possible.
Gotcha. Very good advice. Yeah, the razor is going to be a tough one because that's, as window cleaners, it's on our
Yep.
hip. It's second
Yep.
nature. Yeah,
Yep.
and we hate to. We went through one construction clean where we were told we could not use any razors on it,
Yep.
and I said okay. And it looked, we just had such a hard time getting
Right.
it right, but at the same time, we're like, well, hey, well, at least we know we didn't scratch nothing.
Right. And
you
yeah,
know.
and yeah, that's funny. And in a construction clean, if you're going to use razors, that's fine. Just get them to sign the waiver saying we are going
Yeah.
to use razor and we're not going to be responsible for scratches. Because
Yeah.
you're right. It's probably the best chance to get the best looking glass out of it. But it's one of those things that if you're going to use it, you need to get a waiver beforehand.
Excellent. Good advice.
Awesome.
Good advice.
Yep.
Okay, and so just about the care custody and control exclusions. So there's no way you can get a policy on those things. That's just the way it's written because the company does not want to be the warranty.
Yeah, the company does not want to be the warranty, so that's why you need to get a policy that has that endorsement that adds back a little bit of it. So really, there's no good way to get the coverage for the full policy limit of $1 million that you might have, but you want to make sure your policy does have an endorsement that adds on either 10 or 15 or $25,000 in coverage for it, because it removes the exclusion just for that amount.
Yeah. So, and like you said, so that's going to prevent a company from just being, wild, and they're just going to damage everything because they don't have to be careful. Now, at least if there is an accident, at least a small portion is covered. Hopefully that's the only thing that happens that year, and you're fine. So that makes sense. Excellent. Okay. So the next topic was how to protect yourself. So why is looking for protection so important for a small business owner who's doing windows?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of different situations that we talk about, but other than the situations with general liability waivers and things like that, I think one of the biggest ways to protect yourself is, most of these window cleaning companies, they've got company vehicles, right? And they've got large advertisements on the side of those vehicles.
Yep.
And that's a great thing, right? That's how you get word of mouth out. If you have a nice looking vehicle and you have a guy that shows up, in a nice uniform and, he's cleaning and he looks professional, and, that word of mouth is going to get out there. But you've also got the flip side that you've got these people out there that are, working for you, and accidents happen, right? It's just a fact of life. Vehicle accidents happen. And really it boils down to the fact that sometimes the accidents, the person that the accident's with, it might not be, you might not get the full side of the story, right? So, it used to be 10 years ago in insurance, maybe 15 years ago, it was a big deal if your car had an alarm system, right?
Yes.
They don't care anymore. Like, alarm systems are, yes, that might be great that it has one, but there's nobody you're going to get credit for an alarm system. A majority of the cost of your auto insurance is the liability. And so the reason it's liability is because, I don't know if you've ever stayed home during the day and watched commercials. It's literally the lawyers are on there. It seems like before and after every news segment. And it's not just if you get into an accident anymore. There's ones here where we're from that say if you get into accident with a company vehicle, it literally specifies that. So they don't care about, other types of law. They just care about auto accidents, and they only care about ones when you're in an accident with a company. And that just says, like, you're literally driving around a big bullseye, because they just automatically think that you've got a bunch of coverage. So with that, one, yes, you need to get the right proper limit of coverage, but dash cams is something that has become much, much, much more common. So, 10 years ago, GPS was a big deal. And GPS is still a big deal to have GPS in your vehicles. But I think we're going to see more and more over the next couple of years, the real way to protect yourself is a dash cam. So what that's going to do is it's going to be mounted in your vehicle, and it's going to give a visual narrative along with it. Usually, the ones we recommend tie into your system. So they're also going to know, like, how fast you're going and things like that. and they're going to give a full narrative of the accident so that you're able to make sure that like the truth is going to come out, okay, about that accident, no matter what. And so, if somebody else says something, to the contrary, which unfortunately that happens, you're going to have proof. Now, the dash cam is a great thing. The dash cam tied into a GPS is an even better thing. The best thing, and this is what I will promote the most, the best thing out there is a dual dash cam. And
a dual dash cam.
Dual because it has a camera that also faces inward towards the driver.
Oh.
It's not very popular amongst the drivers. Okay? Of course. But if you look at the history of just motor vehicle accidents and motor vehicle fatalities, for a good 20 years, it was on a fairly steady decline. And about in the vicinity of 2007, it kind of hit a bottom and started to plateau a little bit and go back up. Any idea why 2007 would be an important date?
Probably people using phones in the car.
Yeah, so it was the introduction of the iPhone. Your smartphone. Instead of just a phone where you talk on, it's a phone you look at and you can do other things on it, right? So,
got it.
So the smartphone, the iPhone was introduced in 2007 along with a bunch of other smartphones, and so now we're seeing a steady upward trend. In 2001, there was the largest number of traffic-related fatalities per capita since 2005. So, wow. A big upswing, in a long period of years. And it's because of distracted driving, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're out there and you've got, 3, 4, 5 employees driving your vehicles out there, if you put in a dual dash cam, you're protecting multiple things. You've got GPS then to track your vehicle. You've got a camera that's going to face forward and, basically keep the public honest. But it also is driving a little bit of accountability towards your employees because it's actually looking at them while they're driving. So they're going to know you're pretty serious about not texting while driving or not being on the phone or whatever the case is, and that they need to be paying attention. And it's just an extra layer of accountability. Mm-hmm. Now, the prices of these have dropped dramatically over the last several years. Right now, the going rate, and this fluctuates a little bit depending on where you're at, and, how many vehicles. But the going rate, if you don't want to pay for the equipment up front, you can usually get the equipment for $35 a month per vehicle. So, that includes the actual dash cam that's going to have a camera that faces forward and back, and it has a GPS, and it's going to have a dongle that also ties into the vehicle and then gives you all kinds of information. So like, for instance, it would remind you when you needed to change the oil, and it would tell you if a check engine light was on, things like that. And as an owner, you can have it to where it literally, anytime it has one of those alerts, it can send you a text, and then you click on that text and, say it's a hard braking incident. Well, it's going to show you a picture of it. You click on it, and then it'll pull up, and it'll have like 10 seconds of video before the hard braking occurred, and then the video during, and then a little bit after. So you're going to know if your employee just wasn't paying attention and almost missed a stop sign because they were looking at their phone and slamming on the brakes, or if they got cut off. You're going to be able to tell these things. So, dual dash cams, not only because they protect you, the insurance companies love them. So most insurance companies, where they have the opportunity to give credit on the policy to give a lower premium, they're going to do it if they have the chance, because it shows that you're a business owner that is really invested in protecting yourself and really protecting them as well.
Very good. That's good information. I had no idea. I know with our insurance, we have the little monitors or something with Nationwide that they give you a discount for using those.
Yes.
But the dual dash cam, that sounds great. I love also the feature about, like you said, helping with the maintenance of the vehicles. I I have one employee who that's his job, is to kind of keep track of the maintenance. I mean, that would be awesome for him to get an alert saying, hey, this check engine light just went on. Because, sometimes the employees are pretty good about telling us, but once in a while we'll get it back and I'll see like, hey, wait, when did this check light come on? Oh, I don't know, about maybe 3 weeks ago, and it's like, oh, thanks for telling us. We could have, we could have caused some damage on their driving it like that, depending on what happened. So that's really good. Is there any other aspects of protecting yourself you wanted to talk about before we go on to the next topic?
Yeah, I think the last one I would say is with your, just with your employees. When you're doing training and things like that, I would really make sure. And it's one thing to have a just a safety talk or something like that, talk through it. But just having a sheet of paper where they just initialed it, they listened and heard to it, heard the topic. It may be small and seem inconsequential, but the fact that they're like putting their initials and a date on something is going to lead them to think a little more like, okay, this, the boss wants me to be pretty serious about this. And it's going to just, reinforce the importance of the topic. And the same thing on any of your company policies. Like, if you're training them and say, it's okay to do this and not okay to do that, especially during orientation, just get a quick copy of an initial, give them a copy back, because then you're protecting yourself. If you ever get, unfortunately, like sued by an employee that says, hey, you were mistreating me and you never told me I couldn't do this. Well, you've got a sheet of paper that says you signed it right here.
Interesting.
Yes, it takes a little more time, but anytime you can have somebody initial and throw a date by or sign and put a date on some sort of training, whether it's safety training or policies and procedures or anything like that, it's gonna protect you and help you in the long run.
Excellent. The IWCA is really good with that. If you're a member, you can go onto their site and download what they call toolbox talks.
Yep.
And it's just it's hundreds of little short, kind of outlines of talks you can give, and you can use them for your safety, presentation at your employee meeting. And then it's got lines underneath it with dates that your employers can sign it, and then you can file that away, and you've got that. And that, like you said, in case there's an issue that comes up where they're claiming you did not give them the proper training, well, hey, now you've got this folder full of these talks and these safety meeting topics that now we can show them, hey, yeah, actually you did. Here's the training that we did. So it's a little bit of a nice protection for your company. So, all right. Well, the next topic was auto insurance. So what do we need to know about the cost of auto insurance as a small business owner?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit, but a couple of things to highlight more. Auto insurance, it always shocks people how much it is. And unfortunately, the last several years, I think probably every single person listening to this has been affected by it because the rates have gone up nationwide. And the lawyers we talked about that advertise constantly are a big part of it. But there's also different situations where juries are in general not big fans of companies right now. There's been I think a changing sentiment in the nation when it comes to verdicts and the penalties and things like that levied against companies. And as a business owner, you have to be cognizant of that because while you may have not had any claims if you're with Nationwide Insurance, they may have other clients that have had just massive claims. Okay. And with that, everybody, all the other different clients have to absorb some of that loss. As an example, there's one of the larger claims in 2001 or 2021 was actually it was a company in Texas. They were driving a vehicle on a rural route, and it's typically out in the country, not as much traffic out there. And an employee was just driving a vehicle along, just it was a truck, and the drive shaft fell out. Well, unfortunately, this drive shaft bounced on the pavement and bounced up and, very sadly went through the windshield of the vehicle behind it and killed the passenger instantly.
Oh my gosh.
And this passenger was, he was a husband, a father of 7, and he was a U.S. Army veteran, very well respected person, by every account, right? And so, obviously, what anyone would do, the widow sued, and in this case, they sued both the driver individually as an individual, and they sued the company. And what the long and short of it is that that individual was not held liable, because part of that individual's job duties was not like maintenance of the vehicle.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It was just a quick check of the vehicle, to make sure the tires are inflated, things like that, make sure, the blinkers are working. And if the check engine light comes on, let the boss know. His responsibility was not overall maintenance and knowing if the drive shaft was going bad. But the company itself was held liable, and it was a $281 million lawsuit.
Wow.
$281 million. Now, so that company was a publicly traded company. Okay. Their insurance limit was only $16 million. So, the insurance company cut a check for $16 million and walked away. And then the company had to declare, the rest of the money as a loss on their financials. So the carrier is never going to get any of that money back. And $16 million loss is a pretty big loss. And so that then has to be spread out over all the other companies. There's another case in Florida just 2 years ago where there was actually the first ever $1 billion lawsuit, billion with a B. And that was involving 2 trucking companies. And essentially it was a wild story. One truck that was just driving on its own down the interstate got into an accident, a single vehicle accident, just accidentally flipped his own vehicle, right, and caused a traffic jam. So that guy was okay, and a traffic jam ensued. About 45 minutes later, another truck that's not paying attention smashes into the back of the traffic jam.
Oh.
And amazingly, they smashed in the back of this traffic jam. Only one person died, which is somewhat amazing, but it was an 18-year-old kid. Well, they sued, the family sued, rightfully so. And the interesting part is that the company that made the actual accident that killed the individual, killed the young man, they were only found liable for $100 million in the lawsuit. And there, it's basically he had it on cruise control and was looking at his phone. Okay. He was not paying attention to the road, but most of the other stuff was being followed in that case. Now, this first vehicle that got in the accident, so they're not even, this is what you have to comprehend. They're not even the vehicle that hit this guy that killed him. They just happened to cause a traffic jam.
Yes.
They got hit with $900 million. Wow. And it was because this individual, the guy who was driving did not have a CDL.
He was driving a big rig truck without a CDL.
Rig with no CDL. He was driving over his hours, over the number of hours that he was allowed. And then he was also distracted. He was, on his phone or whatever. And so they found that the company essentially knew this, and that they had this, record of hiring guys that didn't meet the qualifications, because they're just trying to figure out how can I get other people to drive for us, because they were so desperate. And that's what ended up happening. So, we're definitely not trying to scare the daylights out of everybody listening to this, but it's really important to know that, you can be brought into a massive lawsuit, even just for causing a traffic jam with a single vehicle accident where you don't hurt another vehicle. And a big part of it is just because of, kind of the jury sentiment. I'm no one to say whether or not those verdicts of those sizes were worth that amount. You can never put a price on human life and pain and
Of
suffering.
course.
But I mean, these amounts, there's a study out there that one of the law journals tracks the top 100 litigation cases and verdicts every year. And so, every year the top 100 is listed. Well, the average amount of those has increased by fourfold in the last 5 years. Wow. So, like, for example, if the average used to be 50 million, it's now 200 million is the average. And there's more cases in total in the entire list, when you go outside of the top 100. So, your amount the companies are paying off in liability lawsuits has actually multiplied by a pretty large factor. And so, they're being more picky about, who they will write, and they're, having to charge more when they do it. And that's why, they really like it when you've got a business owner that, either has GPS or dash cams or dual dash cams, and runs MBRs on the employees before he hires them, and make sure the insurance company has them on file, and, talks to his drivers about safety. Those are all very, very important things, because it is the single largest thing that can just kind of, blow up an insurance policy is a traffic accident.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff. I think the thing that I didn't really appreciate until you mentioned it earlier was how when these companies have these big multi-million-dollar lawsuits that they lose, that expense is passed on to all the other other people in that company who are insured through that company. So I mean, that's wow, that has a ripple effect for sure for those types of things. So man, good stuff. Now it is 7 till the hour. Did you have somewhere you needed to be, or are we okay continuing?
No, I'm you told me about an hour and 15, so I'm good to keep going.
Excellent. So the next one, this is probably the most important one, at least that I wanted to talk about for the Flowmies. And this was general liability and workers' compensation audits.
Yes.
I hate audits. I hate them. I hate them with the passion. And it's like, you have to do it.
Yep.
And nothing worse than changing companies and then getting a bill for a company you haven't been with for 9 months. Because you did this audit, and now they finally are getting around to telling you, oh yeah, we didn't charge you enough. So fill us in on what's going on with these and how we can get through them.
Audits are tough. Nobody likes them. They're like the worst part of insurance, because there's not any good story to go behind it. It's just
auditors are like the people at the airport who are in lost baggage. It's like, it's never good news.
It's never good news. Exactly. So, and it used to be that we could say that the most important meeting you have of the year is not with your insurance agent, it's with your auditor. But COVID really changed that. There's really not much of a meeting anymore. Most of the time, these guys are either the carrier will send you information and say, upload it into this portal, or maybe somebody will reach out to you and have a quick phone conversation and send you a list of things to email them. But
I just real quick, my bookkeeper, I mean, that's how we've always done it. Was they send us an email, I send it to my bookkeeper, we go through all the rigmarole, and then we send it back to him. And this one time, this one auditor says, oh yeah, so I'm going to be in town at this day, when can we meet? And I was like, what? And I called the bookkeeper, I'm like, he wants to meet with us. She's like, what? Why? What does he need to meet with us for? I'm like, I don't know, but he's saying we need to meet, and so we had to meet with him. That was the only time I've ever done that. Which was very odd, but I guess that's the way it used to be done all the time, huh?
Yeah, no, it used to be that you would have an auditor come into the office and they would go through everything and ask you questions, and you might have the same auditor for 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and get familiar with them, and that would make it nice and easy. And so now, especially because of COVID, and I think it's one of those things that's probably going to be here to stay with a lot of the changes that came across with COVID, is now that, it's going to be virtual, maybe a phone conversation, maybe some emails back and forth, but usually, you're going to be uploading a bunch of stuff into a portal. So, the preparation for the audit actually begins at the beginning of your policy period. So over a year before that audit is when you need to start preparing for it. And And the best thing I can tell you is to talk to your agent about your classifications, and then make sure whatever payroll system or accounting or whatever you're using has those baked into it, so that when you're going and saying, John Doe did this job and it took 2 hours, that your system knows that it was an hour and a half of cleaning from the ground and 30 minutes on a ladder, or whatever the case is. Make sure they know that when Gabe is out, he's out being a outside sales, and he doesn't, he's not cleaning windows. Or just make sure you document everything per the classifications you have on that policy, because that's what the auditors care about. Whether it's general liability or work comp, they want to see stuff broken out by how it's listed on the policy. So that's the first thing. Be upfront in your system and deliver it to where it literally has the class codes listed out on your payrolls, if you will. The other thing is that when it comes time to do the audit, they're going to send you a list of questions and things you have to fill out. And first off is get it as close as submit exactly what they're asking for. Don't tell them a huge long story, because if you tell them a huge long story, they're going to start poking holes and asking lots of questions. So, provide full answers and be concise about it, and then give them the exact list of documents they ask for. But then what I really encourage is that, you provide a narrative, if you will, of what you do and how you do it. And you provide that, if there's a way to do it, like as almost a title sheet or cover page.
Got it.
And if you've, switched companies, or if it's, you never know what auditor you're going to work with, you want to be very specific. Don't just say, we primarily clean windows from zero to, from ground level to 4 stories. Well, if you say that, they're going to automatically think that a good portion of the time you're above ground. No, you need to say that we primarily clean, with the employee on the ground at heights up to 4 stories using a water-fed pole system. That's this classification on our policy. And then, for times where we're on a ladder or a lift, we use this classification, and, this is how much time we use, and how we record it. That way you're kind of painting a picture for them. And then also any oddball things, like oddball situations are the ones where they always stick it to you. Okay. So if you know that last year they had a weird question about, what you paid this subcontractor, or, what this classification was for, just get in front of it and make it easier for the auditors. So these auditors, the ones that used to come into the office, they were, experienced. They did that all the time. A lot of times they work directly for the company. Nowadays, almost none of the auditors work for the company. They're almost exclusively like a third-party vendor. And so, they might work for a large national company that is just literally a bunch of auditors. And so they've probably never seen your account. They've probably never seen a window
right.
that they need to audit. And so they're going to not know what a water-fed pole is. They're not going to know that you all are good enough to, have all the stuff separated out.
Yeah, I did have to have a conversation with one. Yeah, I had to explain what a water-fed pole was, because they had no idea. I mean, I might as well have told them that I have a laser jet window cleaner.
Right.
They had no concept. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, it's just it's a completely foreign, concept for them. So it is very, very important that you specify all of that information in a narrative. And, even if it's like putting it on a 1-page document, and, if it's say it's a Microsoft Word document or something, put a picture of a water-fed pole in there, so they can see, oh, okay, this guy really is like, this is legit. This is what they do. And then, if you do that, you're probably not going to need to adjust it much at all for the next years. But, I can't tell you how many times we see, an audit coming back. And if somebody I think we see it more often than not with first time business owners, like maybe they bought the business and don't realize how important the audit is. and they've got this auditor calling, and they're out trying to go and get sales and finish jobs, and so they think, oh, it's not that important. So they'll do it on the phone. Oh, how much of this is heights? Well, most of it's 2 to 3 stories, and how much of this, do you ever, how much are you cleaning windows? Oh, all the time, all the time. And you just tell him all these things, and then all of a sudden he's freaking out because he gets an audit bill and it's doubling his premium.
That's
and
what happened to me.
What is this? And so then you have to say, okay, you pushed off a meeting being unimportant and tried to get it done quickly, and it literally could be the most costly meeting you have in a year if you don't watch it. And so taking the time to do it right, but then also get it done in time. There's also a bunch of companies that if you do, they may give you a month, and if you go over the month, they're gonna automatically issue a penalty audit.
Yes.
And it's either 1.5 times your premium or 2 times your premium. And let me tell you, if you're on auto pay, that's not a fun okay?
No, that's not a good surprise.
You can't make payments on that. It just all comes out.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's good stuff. I totally agree. In the beginning, I was very lax, and I first had it, because I only had like 1 or 2 employees, and it just was like I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't have a bookkeeper at that time. I was doing it all myself. I did not want to deal with it. And it's exactly what happened. It didn't double, but it was pretty close to it. And it's just because they just did a flat audit and said, okay, this is how much. And I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. I'm going to take these serious from now on.
Right.
Because it can really ding you if you don't take it, view it with the urgency that you need to, for sure. All right, Jeff, one more thing. This is something that I know I've not thought about, and this is regards to key person insurance. What exactly is it, and why is it important for someone who has, like you said, has a long-standing established business, and they need to protect themselves for the future?
Yeah, no, great question. There's people get into a business, and they get into the business of, window cleaning as an example, and you get going for 10 and 15 and 20 years. And at some point, you're maybe going to want to retire. And so there's ways out there that, if you want to retire and you think, oh, well, maybe I could sell this business, and maybe I could sell it to one of my really good employees. Well, you'd probably also be hurting if that employee ever left, or if something happened to them and they couldn't be at work tomorrow. So there's something that we really encourage to, people to look at called key person insurance. So, say you're a business owner and you've been in business for 15 years, you've got a really good, kind of employee. Maybe they're a cleaner or tech, maybe they're an operations manager, and you're a little bit larger of a company, and you'd like them to maybe in the future have the ability to buy the company. So you can actually do what's called a key person life insurance policy, and you would get a whole life policy. And so that's the type of policy where you pick an amount on that policy. Maybe you do it for $50,000 or $100,000. And essentially you would work with, usually an attorney would want to do this, but you as the business owner would pay the premium on that policy. And what it would do is, if at any point something happens to that operations manager and, they pass away, then the life insurance would pay out in the full amount to you to be able to go and hire a replacement. Okay.
Interesting.
But more importantly and more commonly, it goes the full 10 years and nothing happens. Right. So then what you've done, if you do the homework right, up front at the beginning, and remember, kind of like audits, it starts at the beginning. So if you've done that homework right up front, then they're going to have the entire value of that policy in their bank account to make a large down payment on buying the business directly from you.
Look at that. So
you're literally, what it does is it's going to keep that employee there longer, because they know that they're accruing a value. So if they leave, you can have it in the contract that if they leave early, they don't get any of the cash value. And maybe you don't want to sell it to them. Maybe you just want to keep that employee around, for a period of 5 years or 10 years. And so you put that in place. Like if you're here on such and such a date, 5 years from now, you get the entire cash value of that policy. Because I'm sure that if we took a poll of everybody listening to this, there's no one that would say, oh yeah, it's really easy to find good help. And they all just, like I put out a job posting and, 20 people show up to the interview. No, it's the exact opposite. I mean, it's like pulling teeth to find good workers. So,
yes.
What are some of the other things you can do to really make it, a good, long-standing, very incentivized way for that employee to stick around and stick with you. And then as a bonus, if you plan it out and you want to do it that way, you can actually be protecting yourself and paying for their down payment little bits at a time on buying the business from you. So then you end up getting that money back in the end, which everybody wins.
Love it. That is, I'm going to have to be talking to you about that later on. So thank you much for bringing that up. Cause that, I mean, when you're a single owner operator, it's not such a big deal. You're
right.
now worried like, hey, can I just set up my business so when I'm ready to retire, I can sell it. But like for me, my goal is to get off the glass, to run the business and have employees doing the work. Yeah, you have your GM or your top tech and they decide to leave. I mean, that can hurt you. But like you said, that's also an incentive to keep them if they know that that's sitting there at the end of those 10 years, and in the window cleaning field, because it is so easy to start up your own business, a business owner like myself needs all the incentives available to keep the good workers with you and give them a reason to stay rather than to go and start their own business. So excellent. I had no idea about that coverage. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I'm glad that we talked about it. Well, anything else you want to end or mention before we end the podcast? Because this has been packed full of information. I really appreciate your time.
I would just say, insurance is not a fun thing to buy. Nobody likes it. I don't even like paying the premiums on my own insurance, right? But it's one of those things that's necessary. And, as a business owner, the one thing I would ask you to understand, your listeners to understand, is that, not all policies are created equal. And, if you look to an independent agent, they can go and find which carrier and which situation is going to work best for you. Because, that you can come and tell me, this is important to me, this is important to me, and this is important to me. And we can say, okay, well, this carrier is going to be the best fit for you. And, you're going to be able to get a good, a fair premium, and get the right coverage you want and get the things that matter to you so that you can worry about what you want to worry about, which is cleaning windows. So.
Awesome. Well, again, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. And Flowmies, if you want to ask him any more other questions, you can call him. Check, just Google ICI. It's a wonderful company. They've really been very helpful to us. And I know you'll get your questions answered there. So again, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for your time. Please tell Sarah hi for me.
All right, I will.
Thank you, Flowmies, for listening. As always, you guys take care. Have a great weekend and flow on.